Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another exciting edition of Solar Now and the Future with its economic impact on Black America. And I'm your host, Ronald, Bethea, and you know if you join us on a regular basis, the slogan for this show, if there's power in numbers, then the Positive Change Purchasing Cooperative, LLC, captures that power for your financial benefit. The Positive Change Purchasing Cooperative, LLC, serves as an economic blueprint for renewable energy companies, both large and small, along with increasing market share for African and African-American-owned renewable energy companies to address the high energy costs at our historically black colleges and universities, to utilize black-owned farmlands and HBCU campuses to develop capacity and initiative for renewable energy projects to bring down the underemployment of young African and African-American men and women locally, nationally, and throughout the diaspora. Also to educate the African and African-American community locally, nationally, and throughout the diaspora about the economic impacts of climate change and the need for more environmental education in the African and African-American community through talk show formats such as Solar Now and the Future with its economic impact on Black America. Ladies and gentlemen, you also know if you join us on a regular basis that this show is brought to you every week by the National Association of Blacks in Solar. I have some very, very exciting news. We have a new president for the National Association of Blacks in Solar, Mr. Nathaniel Daly, and I will have him on these airways in the very, very near future. He'll be talking about some exciting plans that he has to bring to the table as it relates to the National Association of Blacks in Solar. Also, we will be interviewing some of our board of directors here on this platform in the very, very, very near future. But today, ladies and gentlemen, I'm waiting for a guest, Mr. Antoine Thompson, who serves as Executive Director and CEO of the Greater Washington Clean Cities Collaboration Group. We're going to be looking at the impact of the 2024 presidential elections on the EPA $7 billion Solar for All program. And while I'm waiting for Mr. Thompson to join us this morning on the show, I'm going to sort of set the table for those who are not familiar with the Inflation Reduction Act, are known as the IRA, which was one of the first pieces of our executive orders that President Biden signed when he came to office. Executive Order 13985, Executive Order 1406, and Executive Order 14016, which gave rise to what we know as legislation known as Build Back Better, which $1.7 trillion has gone out of the door of the 6 federal agencies that have been charged with making sure that the funding for infrastructure, for bridges, roads are in place, as well as the Inflation Reduction Act. And under EPA, they had a specific initiative called the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. Under that specific fund, just one initiative, which was known as the Solar for All program, $7 billion was selected to go to 60 selected applicants, which will create new or expand existing low-income solar programs, which will enable over 900,000 households in low and disadvantaged communities to benefit from distributed solar energy. Collectively, these programs will deliver on the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund's objectives by reducing greenhouse gas emissions and other air pollutions, delivering cost savings on electric bills for overburdened households, and unlocking new markets and distributed solar in 25 states and territories that have never had statewide low-income solar before. Now, this information I gathered back on April the 22nd of 2024 when the Greenhouse Gas Initiative, these grantees were announced by EPA. And as I've indicated, we're waiting here this morning to hear. Hopefully, I'll be joined by Mr. Antoine Thompson. I know he's a very, very busy gentleman. I called him on yesterday and had a chance to try to get this information to him again on this morning. I was unable to reach him when I called him. Hopefully, he will be joining me within this 30-minute window that I've set aside to have this discussion this morning as to what is at stake with the November 5th presidential election. It's very, very clear, ladies and gentlemen, if you have not been buried under a rock, you know within the next 25 days that we will be going to the polls to select the next president of the United States of America. And in doing that, this is one of those things that are on the line when the people say, well, what has the Biden-Harris administration done for us? Well, it's one of the things that has been done, but it will be undone if I refer to the gentleman as COVID-45. You know him as our 45th president by the name of Donald Trump, has made it very, very clear. If he is elected, he will, in fact, put a halt to these initiatives which we urgently need to combat climate change. And if anyone thinks that climate change is not real, all you have to do is look at the devastation with the two historical storms that has hit Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, and devastated North Carolina, and they're still not able to get an accurate count on the number of people who have died in these storms that has just hit our back door. Just hit the door. That's not even looking at the billions of dollars in storms that have taken place since 2016. On 4 Congress left, the House and the Senate, the head of the House, Speaker Johnson, made an announcement on C-SPAN that the federal government is appropriating $230 million for an investigation for an attempted assassination on COVID-45, Donald Trump. In the same announcement, not a dime, nothing was mentioned about appropriating additional disaster relief funding for FEMA. The first storm was bearing down from the Gulf on Florida. Not one dime of funding was in fact appropriated by the House. Let's be clear, ladies and gentlemen. President Biden can, in his executive capacity, can declare national disaster emergencies for all 50 states and the islands. But Congress has the power of the purse. When we begin to look at the Greenhouse Gas Initiative Fund and its impact and how it will play out in this process, we have to begin to raise some issues and serious questions on whether this funding will ever come to fruition based on the November 5th election. Let's be very, very clear and speak to power, truth to power as it relates to our young people on this issue. When people say, what do they have to vote for? Let me just provide with you a partial listing of the organizations that has been selected to receive funds. We have Inclusive Prosperity Capital, which is slated to receive $249,300,000. This organization is headed by Mrs. Carrie O'Neill. She's CEO of Inclusive Prosperity Capital, and they are a multi-state nonprofit organization. They are covering some 46 states and the District of Columbia. under their auspices of this program. And just to give you a little information, the Inclusive Prosperity Capital Grant objectives funding, the Community Power Coalition, the CPC SAFE program, Powering America Together, will integrate with support and expand the impact of the U.S. Department of Energy Nationally Community Solar Partnership and Community Power Accelerator Program, with a goal of delivering meaningful benefits for Americans in low-income and disadvantaged communities through community solar projects, led by the Inclusive with the Community Power Accelerator and developers, lenders, trainers, and technical assistance. Okay, this is the objectives of this specific program. But the issue is, will this program ever come to fruition? Now, second organization that we have listed is an organization by the name of Groundswell. Groundswell is slated to receive $156,120,000. They are also a multi-state nonprofit organization, and they are covering the states of Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Mississippi, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Virginia. These organizations are slated to, in fact, be one of the entities that will be impacted by the November 5th elections. When we began to look at this organization is headed by Mrs. Michelle Moore. We will be reaching out to Mrs. Moore and other CEOs of these organizations. And with this week, and between now and the November 5th, we are going to almost host 3 to 4 podcasts a week, reaching out to these various organizations, which will play such a strategic role to get them to explain to my listening public and the African American community why they need to go to the polls and support the Harris, because if Trump gets in, all of this is in jeopardy. This is why I wanted Mr. Thompson to be here this morning to also give his standpoint, viewpoint on where he sees this election and the impact it will have on these various entities. Now, when you begin to look at the various goals of this particular organization, Groundswell's objectives is in the southeast rural areas of the country. Groundswell will launch and implement the Southeastern Rural Safe Program, the Rural Safe Program, delivering residential serving community solar associated energy storage that will support community resilience through the regions, direct solar savings through aligned energy efficiency improvements for low-income and disadvantaged households, and the greenhouse gas emission reduction. The coalition exists with a number of other partners, which we will not be reading any more of this. We're just sort of skimming over this to sort of set the table on this conversation this morning, ladies and gentlemen. Because like I said, there are going to be some folks elected, selected, and elected. And this election will have a devastating impact on whether these programs are even receive this funding. Now, the third organization that we have here is an organization which is called Hope Enterprise. This corporation is based in Jackson, Mississippi, which is run by Mr. William J. Bill Bynum, who is an African-American gentleman, and his credit union, which serves as a CDFI, Certified Community, through the U.S. Treasury, is slated to receive for the state of Mississippi $62,450,000 for the state of Mississippi and $93,670,000 for the state of Arkansas. Their specific grant objectives, Hope Corporation will advance affordable and resilient solar access to low-income and disadvantaged households across Mississippi and Arkansas, utilizing a multi-pronged approach. The residential rooftop solar for all low-income household strategy targets development of residential rooftop solar leasing markets in the areas served by state invested-owned utilities, aiming to ensure savings for low-income households while enhancing local solar installer ecosystem. Now, this is a little different. They're not just talking about what we would call community solar, which is known as subscription solar, to break it down for people who don't live in homes. They're talking about rural communities, and you have more people living in homes than you will have living in apartment buildings in rural, very rural communities. That's just the way the housing industry is constructed here in the U.S. Now, looking at next on board, we have, after Hope Enterprises, we have, in my home state where I hail from in South Carolina, you have the South Carolina Office of Resiliency, which is slated to receive $124,440,000. This organization is headed by Mr. Ben Duncan, Director of the South Carolina's first Chief Resilience Officer, who is an African-American gentleman who has held numerous posts in the state government. He's a graduate of Benedict College, and the goals and grant objectives of the grant, the South Carolina Office of Resilience will expand distributed solar generation and deploy meaningful benefits to low-income and disadvantaged households and communities statewide through the SCORE, which was launched the Community Solar Initiative, a residential serving solar program for low-income qualified residents, homeowners, and renters, and partners with utilities to expand the existing utility-run programs. This program is called SCORE. This is what this funding will be used for in the state, my home state of South Carolina, where I reside from. Now, also, we have listed as number 5, we're looking at the nonprofit organization called the Energy Fund, which is located in St. Lucia County in Florida. They're slated to receive $156,120,000 from the Greenhouse Gas Initiative. This organization is headed by Mr. Doug Coward, who is the executive director of that specific organization. They did not lay out, I'm trying to look at it to see how they laid out their goal grant objectives. The Florida SAFE program will utilize proven and innovative strategies to deploy and scale rooftop distributed solar energy that will provide long-lasting and transformative benefits within the low and moderate income and disadvantaged communities. In Florida, historically, these communities have been left behind due to barriers associated with high front costs and lack of favorable statewide policies to encourage the support to an inclusive clean energy economy. Now, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, you can see, if you look like me, when they're talking about African Americans, low and moderate income communities, they are talking about our community, the African American community. This is the reason why we need to be going to the polls and make sure that we vote on making sure that COVID-45, who I refer to, you know, as Donald Trump, does not win this election come November the 5th. And I am not a registered Democrat. I'm a registered independent. So I'm looking at policy. The question is, what are you going to do for me? I vote for you. What are you going to deliver for me? Oh, I'm finally here with being able to be joined by my guest this morning, Mr. Brother Thompson. Good morning, Mr. Thompson. Can you hear me?
I'm not Mr. Tasha.
Good morning. Is this Mr. Antoine Thompson?
No, it's not. How are you?
I'm great, sir. You calling into a live show here on Solar Now and the Future with its Economic Impact. I'm glad to know that you're out there listening to us. How are you listening to us?
But why are you trying to associate people with a certain political candidate?
Sir,
and also, I got money. Now you asking me to buy, and you trying to make it just this is just for African Black people. It's not. Federal government cannot apply something to you to just particular people. You need to stop putting that information out.
Well, what you need to do, sir, you need to listen rather than tell me what to do.
I'm
with
listening
my
to you.
Platform. Okay, so let me correct you on several things that you said. This is not a program.
I only said two.
Listen, sir. This is not a program specifically for African Americans. This is a program called the Sir, are you familiar with the Greenhouse Gas Initiative put out by EPA, where $7 billion of your tax dollars was committed to 60 grantees on April the 24th for 2024. Are you familiar with that program, sir?
I know about things that's been put out by the EPA. Matter of fact, Article 5 Convention is talking about getting rid of the EPA and let it go back to the states where it should be.
I'm not talking about what the Article 5 is talking about. I'm talking about grant money.
Are you familiar with Article 5?
Grant money, which has already been committed to 600 organizations to help 900,000 low and moderate income residents, and that's not just African American community.
It's not for blacks, right?
Talk me on my show, okay? So let's get this clear, okay? We can't. I'm not going to argue with anyone.
Well, I got a question when you're done.
Okay, fine. What I have said and what I have been doing, sir, is going through the various organizations that have been, these commitments have been made to, explaining to people why it is important for their vote to continue these commitments to these organizations. If you have been following Donald Trump, which I think you have, it's very, very clear that he's made it very clear if he comes to office that he intends to shut these initiatives down. Now,
all right, now let me respond to that.
I don't know whether you are aware of the storms that have just hit Georgia,
if you
Florida,
asking me,
and
I can
South
respond
Carolina,
to that.
but if you are, that you know that the scientists have shown that they have come because of climate change. So with that being said, sir, what is your point? Because you come on my show telling me
my
what
point
to
is
say.
this. My point is this.
What's your point?
My point is this, is that you're advertising something as if it's just for African American, black people. A lot of blacks don't like to be called no African Americans. And it's not true. And you should stop saying things like that.
Well, it's
not just, it's for Americans. Am I right?
I tell you, sir, first you're not listening.
You're not listening to me. Wait a minute. Am I right about this?
I have not come on this show this morning, which is my show, and said this was for African Americans. I said
every person you said that they was an African American, he's a black man. He's an African American. Now let me tell you something. I have people that's involved in gas and natural and petroleum. Okay, so we like to promote that aspect of the industry. My point is this. I'm gonna say this and I'm gonna leave. You told me that I could talk, but you keep cutting me off because you don't like what I'm saying, and I am black. You don't like for blacks to talk like this, now do you? You hate it. We are not buying your product based on you saying that it's just for African Americans. That's a lie. It's for Americans.
At no point in time have I said that these programs were just specifically for African Americans. A number of the programs that I have spoken to, this is where you have such confusion because you have these kind of individuals who want to hear what they want to hear, but they will not come on this show and dictate to me what I will say. If anyone else is out there listening, please take the time to come on the airways. Our call-in number is 646-668-2948. Once again, that call-in number is 646-668-2948. Please press 1 on the phone pad after dialing the call-in number, because you have these type of individuals who want to come on, have the audacity of this Negro to come on my show and to tell me that I am specifically speaking to the issue of African Americans. I am speaking to the issue of the impact that it will have on the African American community, because these programs are targeted for low and moderate income communities. Low and moderate income communities does not mean African Americans solely. So at no point in time have I spoken to that. What I have pointed out is that $1.7 trillion have gone of the coffers of the federal agencies, and less than 2% of that funding have gone to African American run and led organizations. And if he has a problem with those facts, well, he needs to take that up with the Biden administration. Now, he talked about Article 5, okay? He talked about this information is not factual. Well, if it's not factual, and I asked him what did he know about the Greenhouse Gas Initiative and the entities that were selected, he knew very, very little, because he couldn't give me any information on any of these organizations. This is why we do the show, because there is an educational process when it deals with black folks, trying to educate black folks, because we have this self-hatred piece to the point where when you mention that you are of African and African American descent, this brother has a problem with his heritage, that he wants to jump on, call up my show, and rather than talk about this program and find out about the program is to discuss with me that it's not just for African Americans. With that being said, I'm going to stay on my soapbox this morning. Well, we weren't joined by Mr. Antoine Thompson. We set forth the first 30 minutes of our show to talk about this with him, but we're going to continue to talk about the greenhouse gas initiative here on the platform of Solar Now and the Future with its economic impact on Black America. We're going to take a slight pause for the calls, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll be right back here on this program of Solar Now and the Future with its economic impact on Black America. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to our theme song, which is Desert Drive, which is by a brilliant young artist, Mr. Ali Alim, who composed that song. We have switched our introductory song for our platform here on the platform of Solar Now and the Future with its economic impact on Black America. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, that call-in number is 646-668-2948. And it's good to even get calls from people who don't even want to listen. You know what I mean? It's good to hear that I got people out there who are listening who think that they have the ability, because we are producing this show here on this platform, to call and tell me that the program is not just for African Americans. It's not just for black folks. And most people, well, he has a problem with his own seem to have a problem with his ethnicity and identity. I am an African American and a proud African of African descent. So if that's his problem, let that be his problem. Now, as we're going to jump right back in, we're going to continue to speak to these entities that we have on this list. Now, we have the Capital Good Fund. The Capital Good Fund is a multi-state nonprofit organization, a number of southern states, and it's headed by a young gentleman by the name of I'm looking right now for the CEO of the organization, and their goals of the program, the Capital Good Program, the Capital Good Fund grant objectives. The Georgia Bright Community Coalition seeks to bring benefits to solar to disadvantaged communities across the state of Georgia, a coalition led by the Capital Good Fund. And this young man who runs this organization is European descent. So like I said, most of these organizations are not headed by African Americans that I am reading. So when there is a organization that is headed by an African American, I am going to make that known to our listening audience, because we need to know that there are some of our organizations that have, in fact, been selected in this process. That is what the nature of this show is called, Solar Now and the Future, with its economic impact on Black America. Maybe the gentleman didn't take the time to listen to our preliminary introduction to the show and what this platform is about. But nevertheless, most of us hear what we want to hear anyway. With that being said, as I said, they're going to be working in the state of Georgia. Now you have an organization, which is a nonprofit organization in Indiana, the Community Action Association. They're an in-state nonprofit organization. They're receiving $117,470,000 has been committed to this organization to work in the state of Indiana, and the objectives of the organizations were not spelled out for that specific organization that I was able to gather that information in Indiana. Oh, yes, it is. Here it is. The Indiana Safe Coalition of multiple governments and community entities, Fort Wayne, Gary, Indianapolis, Columbus, combined with 6 statewide organizations. The coalition will collectively solarize low-income homes while transforming the market in Indiana by creating new financial products and incentives to jumpstart the solar and low-income residents for new affordable housing developments and more. In the dialogue with the utility companies, the tandem with the schools to work with the industry development efforts, and the coalition is committed to lead towards solar in Indiana and from the grassroots up. That is the objectives of this particular grant in the state of Indiana. So as we keep it moving down the list, we are now looking at an organization which is headed by Mr. Michael Jeans, who is an African-American gentleman, who's a brilliant gentleman, Chief Executive Officer, founding president and CEO of the Growth Opportunities Partnership, a business advisory investment leading community financial institution. Growth Ops provides capital management, counseling, and advisory services to support growth of companies and the development of management teams. Growth Ops and particular focus on the impact, and they moderate low and moderate income deserved communities. Now, in 2020, Growth Ops established a Go for Green Energy, the first African-American led green bank in the United States, sir. I hope you are still listening. You may have a problem with that, but this gentleman did put that information in their organizational. And their objectives of the grant, the Industrial Heartland Solar Coalition, headquarters in Ohio, unites 31 communities spanning 8 states from Midwest to the Rust Belt, led by the partnership. The coalition will catalyze clean energy transitions in America, industry heartline communities. The SAFE program will be centrally run by Growth Ops and local informed, implemented by 18 coalition members. So this is the organization that's based in Ohio. This is the objectives of their program. This is an organization that's being run by a European white lady in Texas, okay? It's called the Municipality, Harris County, Texas statewide. Now, I hope you're listening. They're receiving $249,700,000 of our tax dollars, okay? The executive director, Mrs. Pete Parsons of the Texas Solar Energy Society. They're based in Austin, Texas. So if you have an issue with that, you can contact me. You can get back in contact with me. But we're going to look at the goals and of the grant objectives of this program. The Texas Safe Coalition of Texas municipalities serving low-income and disadvantaged communities, population of 11 million people. I'm quite sure they're not all black folks. Okay? The coalition goal is to transform access to distributed solar in Texas, creating new community wealth and savings through energy cost reduction, equity opportunities, and access to good paying, clean jobs. Now, the issue of this conversation is, what will be the impact if Donald Trump gets reelected on November the 5th? I asked that question to the gentleman that was on the show. He did not have a response to that question. That was the point. He wanted to jump off and go to another area of discussion. Discussion is, what will be the impact of this presidential election, November the 5th, 2024, on these various programs? Now, let me continue to sort of stroll down before we switch gears, because there's one other gentleman I want to mention, and I'm going to make sure that this gentleman here understands this. This organization is headed by a gentleman called the father of environmental and equity movement in America, Dr. Bullard. Robert D. Bullard, Ph.D., is the founding director of the Bullard Center at Texas Southern University. I hope this gentleman, I'm quite sure he's aware that that is an HBCU, but he's called the father of the environmental movement in this country. It seems as though black folks have such a self-hatred embedded in us that we don't like to give credit to other folks who are of African descent and are African Americans that have been trailblazers. But I try to raise our people up and lift our folks up here on this platform, Solar Now and the Future with its Economic Impact on Black America. Now, Dr. Bullard and the center will be receiving $50 million for the environmental program that they are running at Texas Southern University in Houston. And I know the late Congresswoman Barbara Lee Jackson played a major role in securing that funding before she passed for Texas Southern University and Dr. Bullard there, and they're doing outstanding work there at the center there in Houston. With that being said, we want to move on to several of these organizations. We're looking at the nonprofit organization of Bonneville Environmental Foundation. It's headed by Todd Revere, who's CEO of Bonneville Environmental Foundation. They're going to be receiving they're in Montana, and they're going to be receiving $43,700,000 from this greenhouse gas initiative. And the grant objectives of the program for the Montana SAFE program will expand economic, environmental benefits to solar to low and moderate income, tribal, and disadvantaged communities across the state. Let me read that again for this gentleman. The benefits of the solar low-end program is for tribal and disadvantaged communities across the state. This will be achieved through community design programs that address market and non-market barriers for residential solar through outreach, workforce development, and technical and financial assistance. I'm quite sure he may be aware, but if you check the census data, you'll find very few African Americans who are in Montana. We got a few, but not many. So as I indicated at the top of this show, this is a national program, and this is just a short group of the organizations that were selected by EPA. The issue is, will this funding come to fruition based on the vote on November the 5th, 2024? And I will say this, based on the track record of the Biden-Harris administration versus that of Donald J. Trump, clear that his administration will not continue to fund these programs based on what he has said out of his own mouth, not what I'm saying out of my mouth. And if you are following the news, I think this gentleman may be a Fox News listener, but you need to switch over to C-SPAN, MSNBC, and the CBC and CNN and get some other perspectives on news, as this campaign has been covered from one extreme to the next extreme. And that is you want to call it the left, the right, or the middle. Take your choice, sir. The bottom line is, which candidate's administration has introduced this legislation and gotten this funding into the pipeline for 990,000 low and moderate income residents in the United States of America. And because he's in the fossil fuel industry, I did hear what you said, sir. You in the gas and oil industry. Be clear about this. We understand that the gas and oil industry controls 85% of the market share in this country. That's the problem. And they don't want to give up market share. So first, if you want to call this show, let's talk about what the topic of discussion is. What will be the impact of the 2024 presidential election of November the 5th, 2024, impact on this greenhouse gas initiative through EPA? And once again, I will be glad to share this information with Lottie, Dottie, and everybody. And that call-in number is 646-668-2948. As we're going to continue here, we're going to do another show. We're going to talk about the Corporate Transparency Act. We're going to go ahead and complete this last segment because we've got about 2 more minutes before we get ready to call this show, because we've covered our 60-minute time slot today. as we look at the Nonprofit Coalition for Green Capital, which is a nonprofit organization in South Dakota, they're receiving $62,400,000, the same amount of money that's being awarded to the District of Columbia and the state of Maryland. They are in South Dakota, which will reduce greenhouse gas and other air pollutants by increasing the deployment of solar products across the state by providing solar arrays to single-family homes. The program will facilitate grant, tax, and low-interest lending to develop solar units for multifamily dwellings. These funds will also be used to mobilize financing of private capital by enabling community development, financial institutions, credit unions, rural electric cooperatives, and municipal utilities to gain expertise in administering and resolving loan funds without incurring significant risks. So, with that being said, that is the grant objectives of the program for South Dakota, and the same can be said for North Dakota because it's also being covered through another nonprofit organization. Now, this is a Native American organization, OSWE Corporation Grant Objectives. This is a program, it's a native residential and community solar deployment by acting as the intermediary between professional service partners, developers, and tribal governments, which is going to be launched. Also, they will be receiving, looking at the organizational structure, $135,580,000 of U.S. tax dollars. And as I've indicated, sir, this is a national program. The issue is what will be the impact of the greenhouse gas initiative? Or what will be the impact of the election on this initiative? There's $7 billion at stake. The African American community should realize that we stand to benefit greatly from this program and that they need to do their own research, look at the initiatives, look at the programs, find out about these programs, find out about whether this funding will go forward, whether Kamala Harris is elected or not. There is 18 Republican senators that have already sent letters to Speaker Johnson telling them hands off the IRA before this section. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, you've been listening to me. I'm your host, Ronald Bethea, here on the platform of Solar Now and the Future with its economic impact on Black America. And remember, this show serves as an economic blueprint for renewable energy companies, both large and small, with increasing market share for African and African American renewable energy companies. The Positive Change Purchasing Cooperative, LLC, which I am the founder and CEO, and we write the check that pays for this platform. So with that being said, is everybody, we welcome all callers, all views, but people will not come on this show and tell me I'm providing misinformation and wrong information, and when they are not listening. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, until next week, we said we don't want you to meet us back here. We want us to beat us back here as we close another exciting edition of Solar Now and the Future with its economic impact on Black America. And until next week, go in peace.